There are interesting things going on behind the scenes in the Conservative Party. Obviously, today we will have had sort of the official first vote, and the second vote will be happening later on today. I won't. Maybe I'll do a video on it. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But of course, we talked about very recently, of course, on the live streams that we've done recently about the break there seems to be in the right wing of the Tory party. But there is a more interesting break in the Tory party that will affect them far more deeply than I think they actually seem to realize. I talked very recently about an article there was in the Telegraph. Yeah, the Telegraph. Unfortunately, I really would have loved to have done it, but it's behind the paywall. But the article was about a group of Green Tories, because there was very much in the Conservative Party a consensus that going towards net zero was a good idea. But every single current leadership candidate in this Conservative leadership race has pledged to drop net zero. But in that Telegraph article, you had a group of Green Tories come out and say, do not drop this. It is important. Not only have we seen the polling numbers that net zero polls incredibly well, with it being almost second to the NHS in many voters' minds, but also think about COP26, an event that was sold by the Brexiteers as, look, this is Britain being on the global stage, and performed actually quite well, getting many countries to agree to net zero targets. Of course, not maybe as fast as many environmentalists as would have liked, but hey, you've got to start somewhere, right? So obviously dropping that would be huge damage to Britain's international reputation. And once again, so much for global Britain, right? And we've even seen very recently many of these, again, not surprisingly, the Brexiteers try to force the issue of saying that they want a referendum on net zero. So this could be very, very interesting and spell a lot of trouble for the future Conservative Party, especially if all of them suddenly start dropping these net zero pledges. They're certainly going to find it very, very interesting electorally, because every other party can run rings around them on this. And one of the main things that the Tories complain about is, I think it was Badenoch said in her launch speech that net zero was like committing, economic self-harm. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's not really what net zero is about. Net zero is about helping many of these businesses transition to a time where they would need to do these things anyway. So far, far better to get businesses on board earlier, where they don't have to spend as much money as maybe they would later down the line. It's a good thing getting them transitioning now rather than later. So, and of course, it helps them economically as well. But that's, again, different things. But anyway, more interestingly, of course, is this split between these Green Tories and even the rest of the Tory party, which certainly is going to cause some very interesting ripples down the line. So let's go into this article and find out more about this split in the Tory party between the Green Tories and the non-Green Tories, which sounds a bit of an oxymoron when you say Green Tory, but hey, there you go. So let's go into this article and find out more about this. So before we do that, please do remember to that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there is a link to my Patreon page and a notification link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. So over we go to The Guardian with the title of "The Tory Green Consensus is Breaking, and this leadership contest could spell the end of net zero." This weekend, I received a call from a well-known Green Conservative telling me to stop using the phrase net zero in my articles and tweets about the leadership election. It has become too toxic, he said. While this wasn't shocking, it wasn't completely unexpected. None of the leadership candidates so far have made the positive case for green jobs and cheaper renewable energy. Instead, the only ones speaking about climate change are the culture warriors, Savula Berryman and Kemi Badnock, who wish to scrap the net zero targets. As a reporter who covers this space where environmental and politics overlap, I watched this happen with a very sinking feeling, knowing my worst predictions could be coming to pass, that our net zero commitments could be abandoned without the consent of the electorate as the leadership candidate decides to just ditch it. Just 3 years ago, under Theresa May's government, the policy to emit no more greenhouse gases than we absorbed by 2050 was signed into law. This was championed by almost every Conservative, bar a fringe few. Later on in 2019, every single MP stood on a net zero manifesto led by Boris Johnson, who had a buccaneering vision of a green economy and was excited to put a post-Brexit vision of Britain as a world leader on the stage at the UN Environmental Summit of COP26 the following year. Even those in the green space who do not vote Conservative have grudgingly said that a lot of the policies put forward were pretty good. But underneath all of this, there has been a slow creeping campaign by nimble right-wing groups of MPs who have been winning over key colleagues to the climate skeptic cause. Exactly what happened with the Eurosceptics. Euroscepticism, again, fringe view in the Conservative Party. But what happened? They started to claw more and more MPs over to their side, which eventually caused David Cameron to call the Brexit referendum. I still think we might end up with at some point a referendum on net zero. I wouldn't be surprised. So, fresh from his Brexit win, the MP for Wickham, Steve Baker, found another cosy consensus to shatter, that of net zero. Baker, who commands the powerful ERG group credited with pushing a hard Brexit, became the trustee of a climate skeptic think tank, the Global Warming Policy Foundation. He then, along with a colleague, Craig McKinley, set up the Parliamentary Net Zero Scrutiny Group, launching it in the pages of the Telegraph about getting over 20 MPs to sign up to it. They said that they wanted to question net zero and argued that it was too expensive. This rang alarm bells for me. And so in February of this year, my colleague Matt Taylor and I dug into it and found that the group had been lobbying other MPs for months and slowly trying to chip away at the climate consensus. We warned that the Conservatives were slipping into a climate culture war, similar to the one they had over Brexit. At the time, some Green activists chided me, pointing out that the majority of Conservatives at the time wanted to reach net zero, and that half of all backbenchers are in the Conservative Climate Environmental Network, a forum committed to net zero policies and targets. This is exactly what we saw happen with Euroscepticism. Fringe view, slowly getting more and more MPs to back them till it becomes this culture war issue within the party. And then all of a sudden, we have to have a referendum on our membership of the EU. It'll happen this exact same way. So here it continues. But while covering the Brexit campaign, I'd seen how a small, nimble alliance of right-wing campaigners can leave a large group enjoying contended consensus in the dust. I fear that this has happened. And while the anti-net zero faction has been plotting for months, finding candidates who will ditch net zero in return for support, the larger Green wing has assumed that net zero is a given. As Boris Johnson weakened and fell, the climate skeptics were working behind the scenes to find a successor who would ditch his green policies. But the Green wing was not fighting the same battle. This weekend, I understand, it was still trying to find a candidate to sign up to the eco pledges that are in the 2019 Conservative Manifesto. Meanwhile, the conversation around climate change has been dominated by Braverman and Badnock. While reporting on this, I've been speaking to the Braverman Baker campaign about their tactics to try and understand what has happened. They agree with me that the Green Wing has not yet put out a coherent positive message. Baker is the structure for the campaign called Why, What, How, and What If. Answering all these questions, he says, his rivals are failing because they have inadequate answers on how, and just to pivot back to why, adding, hysterics are not a survival strategy. And he's right. Similar to how the Remain campaign messaging was largely negative, assuming the positive case for staying in the EU was already established consensus. Conservative members and MPs have not heard much about the positive case for net zero. The language hasn't been about better jobs or cheaper bills, rather the peril of risking the future climate change. And the result, net zero has been left behind. This is obvious from the way the leadership race is playing out. Michael Gove, who many think of as one of the Green Tories, is backing Badenoch. Even he appears to have abandoned ship. Jeremy Hunt, who is supposed to be one of the more centrist candidates, is running alongside Esha McVeigh, who is in Steve Baker's net zero scrutiny group. Depressingly, the libertarian Liz Truss is being cited by many Green Tories as their last hope, which is certainly very depressing. While she is not committed to the net zero manifesto pledge at the time of writing, she is backed by Green Tories, including Vicky Ford, Simon Clarke, both who have cited her support of COP26 as one of the reasons that they are backing her. While Badenoch and Braverman are highly unlikely to reach the final two, candidates including Rishi Sunak will be vying for their support, and with it, the support of MPs backing them. This is the worry that a Tory leader might abandon the climate commitments to gain power. The Green Tories should really be putting candidates in this position, falling behind another one on the coalition that they back positive climate change policies and making the final two candidates fight for their support. But from my conversations with the Green Conservatives, they seem incredibly disorganized and weak. They have been squabbling over whether to use the phrase net zero rather than putting their case to the nation. All of this disorganized and turmoil has resulted in a leadership campaign that could strip the country of its climate commitments and end the dream of net zero, just as we led COP26. If we fail, it could pave the way for others to follow. And it is no wonder that the green wing of the party is confused and terrified. The habitable future of the planet could very well rest on their shoulders. What a scary thought. And what a scary thought indeed, that this Tory leadership contest could very well determine the green future of this planet. What a scary thought indeed. Yeah. And I agree with that. I do recognize the tactics at play here. They are exactly what happened in the Brexit campaign. Make no mistake. If they can succeed in getting rid of net zero, then they will. And it will have been the fault of these Green Tories who could not put forward a good, coherent message for the positives of achieving net zero. And they are a lot of positive green jobs. You can bring back manufacturing in all these in all these areas. There's so much stuff that the positives you can talk about these green jobs. I've talked at length about the decarbonization of the steel industry, which would secure the steel industry's future in the UK for generations to come. And yet, not one Conservative has ever talked about this. It has only been Ed Miliband in the Labour Party that has talked about this. And I would hope that does become a Labour policy. Yes, that would help secure a ton of jobs. So, yeah, but this is how, unfortunately, this hard right libertarian faction in the Conservative Party operates. And it is very, very scary that they can go after what is an assumed consensus, because everyone thought, hey, we're not going to leave the EU. We know all the good arguments for staying it. Leaving it is an absolutely ridiculous idea, as we are finding out now. And now they're using the exact same tactics to go after net zero to get rid of that. and down the drain go all the positives that we could have had of having a net zero economy and changing our economy to a green one that could protect our and safeguard so many future things for the future, not to mention the habitability of the planet to come. Because I will say this now, the author is right. If the UK suddenly starts to ditch its green commitments to it made at COP26, so will many other countries as well. And that will be an absolute disaster, not just for here in the UK, but for the world as a whole. So it will be terrifying if in 30 or 40 years time, if that happens, we can trace the complete destruction of our environment right back to this Tory leadership contest. That will be completely bizarre, but unfortunately, that is this very scary thought we are indeed looking at in this Tory leadership contest. And the Green Tories need to get their act together. They need to get organised. And the thing is, this hard right group, if they succeed on things like Brexit and net zero, well, what could they use these tactics to go after next? Do they go after minimum wage? Do they go after workers' rights next? Do they go after human rights next? Do they go after abortion next? It's all possible, and it's all to play for, because you need to get not only just an organized resistance here in sort of the opposition parties, but people in their own party who are opposed to these far right libertarian crazy ideas need to get organized as well, because you are seeing exactly just how this very, very small minority can affect huge consequences when they are a tiny minority within their party that no one would actually vote for if they were putting forward these ideas. So, as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.